has to be included in the paper, because as a former academic, as a former scholar, I know how frustrating it could be to rewrite and rewrite and rewrite the paper again and again and again after each set of new comments. I would just be happy if this would be something that you will bear in mind, because this may be important for Georgia's relevant stakeholders, so they do not forget about it in the implementation phase of the strategic communication project. When I talk about the public diplomacy element of the communication, I have in mind the interactions with the non-governmental entities and organizations and individuals. And I believe, and it has proved to be true in Slovak case, that using some public diplomacy tools could be very effective and a complementary tool in promoting the national interest of the country. Through understanding and through communicating with and through influencing foreign audiences, target countries. So not that much communication with the foreign governments, but directly with the audiences in those foreign countries. And it's because the citizens in these countries, be it US, Germany, France, and other EU and NATO member states that are important for Georgia's ambitions, the citizens are becoming to ever increasing degree the critical observers and active participants in foreign policy. And many foreign policy issues are immediately being confronted with the effects of domestic and foreign public opinion. And the disfavor of the public is capable of making any Georgia's policy more expensive, or even doom it directly to failure. And on the other hand, the favorable perception of Georgia by public in these specific countries could significantly help in achieving your strategic goals. From our experience, and also from what the scholars say, in order to be successful, the efforts of public diplomacy have to be kind of non-party and long-term effects. But what is most important, they have to be credible. No matter how good the presentation or strategic communication is, in the long term, it won't be capable of selling the product if that product in itself is not of the highest quality. So basically, the fate of the Georgia's strategic communication and public diplomacy efforts is in the greatest degree in the hands of Georgia's politicians, because as long as Georgia acts as a responsible player and in the global arena, and it maintains good relations with the key players, and as long as it acts in relations to its own citizens as a guarantor of their human rights and freedoms and rule of law, then Georgia's ability to achieve its strategic interests will be strengthened. That's exactly what Dmitry has highlighted in his paper, that, for example, the US views very critically, and it's very important for the US government, how the strengthening of the democracy or the human rights in Georgia evolves. Regarding the tools of public diplomacy and strategic communication, there is a wide variety of them. There are many things you can do to win the hearts and minds of people in the recipient countries. I will name just a few, such as country branding campaigns, information campaigns, international broadcasting, cultural diplomacy, student exchange programs, etc. And these all could lead toward building a denser network between actors on both sides. And this will lead next to the better perception and better understanding of Georgia. And this will result in the higher trustworthiness and accumulation of goodwill. And this trustworthiness and goodwill are like a conditio sine qua non of credibility, which, as I mentioned, is necessary for any successful operation in the international scene. What I believe is important in to achieve this, one has to coordinate with the domestic actors, because these domestic actors have good networks in the international arena. And I have in mind consultations with the domestic academic environment, involvement of actors such as domestic tourist trade, tourist board, investment and trade development body or agency, National Olympic Committee, different sport associations, different creative industry or cultural export agencies, unions, student organizations, etc. All these actors could serve as your ambassadors. And if they share the sense of ownership of the process, they could prove to be invaluably effective during the implementation phase via their own channels, their own networks, their own programs. They could amplify the messages of your strategic communications. And the reality is that competing for attention and influence is very challenging for countries like Georgia or Slovakia, because we are relatively small and limited in our financial and human resources. And therefore, we need a well-defined concept of strategic communication, such as provided by Dmitry, complemented with creative, effective, and also kind of low-cost ways and tools to make our voice heard at all. And our countries have little media coverage, and when it comes, it's sometimes linked to crisis, which is not exactly what we want. And we have to overcome many stereotypes as well. And we have to reposition our countries as reliable members of the exclusive clubs such as EU and NATO. And public diplomacy is an excellent tool to do this, to do so. It creates a sort of enabling environment for advancement of our foreign policy goals. It helps with the perception management. It works hand in hand with destination branding, cultural diplomacy in helping the strategic communication of the country. To sum it up, I would like to encourage you to evaluate and elaborate on the public diplomacy element of the communication as a next step of your efforts. As I said, it does not have to be included in the paper, but it's from our experience, very important to have it in mind in the implementation phase. And finding any ways to facilitate the dialogue between Georgia's public and NATO, EU member states public, on the other hand, on the other side, would be very helpful. And dialogue and relationship management are especially useful in this regard, as opposed to one-way communication of a message. It's always much better when it is a dialogue and when it is relationship building. And what could prove to be very helpful is working through parties that people trust, such as NGOs or Georgia's international diaspora. And working through these parties could really help to increase people's familiarity with Georgia, people's appreciation of Georgia, and in the end, their support for your cause. That's all from my side now.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I hear some echo. Now it's better.
Okay, it works now, I guess. Yeah, good. Thanks a lot, Andrei. So I think that your highlight was about stressing or making emphasis on the public diplomacy. Looking at my colleagues here, I think that there might be some comments, because I saw that a lot of the remarks were made and written down. So please, we can start the discussion now. We have something like 30 minutes for that discussion. I also have some comments from my side, but maybe we can start. Others can start, and then I will also join with my comments and suggestions. Isha, please, if you can introduce yourself once you take the floor. I don't know. I think that we don't. Do we have mic or okay? You just.
Hello, everybody, and first of all, thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you very much for Mr. Skitishvili for well done work. and presentation today. Somehow I'll have to continue with what Mr. Kazovic mentioned regarding the involvement of civil society in the process. And to add that the Georgian diaspora in Europe or in countries where communicate the foreign policy. We have a very good example how the Georgians or citizens of Georgia or former citizens of Georgia are involved in the everyday life of the European countries. Very, very good example of this is the two Georgian sculpture artists who renovated in the Brussels, in the center of the Europe, in the center of Brussels, the Grand Place architectural buildings. And there are two Georgian citizens, or former, sorry, Antwerp-based persons. And it's not known even for Georgians, as I see. Yeah. It was years I'm talking about this issue as an example, how to use the Georgians, success Georgians to communicate Georgia's policy or Georgia themselves in the European countries. And in the period I'm talking about that, they moved from the Grand Place to another places of the Belgium, for example, and continuing their success work. And we have the many of that kind of success Georgians. Unfortunately, in Georgia's media and all media is more popular, I mean, are the Georgian criminals in the Europe, unfortunately. Okay. Mr. Tskitishvili mentioned that because of the dynamic of the international policy, this document also needs to be rewritten. I know there's some strong limitation with the time and etc. But still, I think it should be mentioned that the huge change because here we have two EU member countries, Germany and France. But I think it's also, it used to be important and nowadays it's more important to mention two European countries, initiators of the Eastern Partnership, Sweden and Poland. And the role of the Sweden even more important after the Sweden and Finland these two countries applies for the NATO membership. And it's also quite obvious the lobbies of or supporters of Georgia's membership to the NATO is the eastern flank of the NATO. It's starting from Turkey and then with Baltic states. And I'm not sure about the Sweden, but I'm sure they also will be supportive for the Georgia's integration to the NATO. That's why I think it's important to having in mind in such documents like this communication is these two countries, including Sweden, Finland, and Poland. Sweden and Poland is traditional the countries interested in the eastern flank of the EU. It was mentioned that the involvement of the political parties is for all Georgian, most of the Georgian political parties are the European political parties family members. But here we have some problems because problems of the cooperation of the ruling party and opposition party. We Georgian NGOs had we had the meeting with the parliamentary political parties regarding the Georgia applied for the EU membership, and it was Vano himself talking about this issue to use this kind of European party families to lobbying this issue, and we were asking, meaning Vano, to opposition parties of Georgia to using their links to the European parties on supporting their Georgia's candidate status. Yeah. Also, Mr. Petishvili mentioned that it should be some umbrella communication policy. I would agree with that, and also I would to say that the reforms, especially on the that issue you mentioned, our European partners are related like human rights, judiciary, etc. These reforms also have their own communication strategy of course, this reform should exist, and then strategy should be, they have to have this communication strategy. Sorry, I take too much time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Misha. Any other comments? Yeah, please.
Thank you very much, Bogita Rutashvili from Georgian Center of Strategy and Development. First of all, thank you so much for a very timely and very interesting document. So talking about the external communications, I believe it is very important to think about, in general, more effective communication system in the country, because of course it will be very hard to have effective communications if we see the gaps on internal cross-government, cross-sectoral communication and communication challenges in our own country. Because as we see, I totally agree with the speaker that they mentioned that engagement of different stakeholders has a very important role when we are talking about modern strategic communications, which includes whole of society communication and including many different stakeholders, because this is of course external communication strategy, but even not Minister of Foreign Affairs is responsible to separately implement the strategy effectively. Yeah, that should be the strategy of the government. And I believe, and as I know, government of Georgia also thinking to develop this one comprehensive communication strategy. I don't know if there will be separate topics of internal and external communication issues, but there is some ideas developing whole of government communication strategy, which will be an umbrella document. And in that document, for sure, there should be a clear vision about the issues we are discussing for today. And also, there's a very dynamic discussions about the changing environment in the EU as well, and new discussions about market-speed Europe, and this process is very dynamic. And I believe very correctly mentioned that enhancing bilateral cooperations and working not only with institutions such as NATO and EU, but working with the individual countries who have more and more importance. And in this regard, I believe we should have to be more proactive because, as always, just countering some disinformation, propaganda is not what we all would like to see, because branding and reputation means a lot. And if we would like to have a positive impact, I think we should have to think about also, I don't know how, but the polarization influence a lot, and somehow there should be some more focus on reducing this polarization all over the country, because otherwise it influences each and every aspect of the country's reputation, branding, and many other things. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gogi. Any other comments? Yeah, Irina, please.
Yeah, hello. First of all, thank you for very interesting presentation and recommendations. I think with the changing reality which we are facing today in the world, and especially in this part of the world, everything is changing, and with the very aggressive communication, successful communication of Ukraine, I think we also need to somehow review our external communication, which I don't think has been too much successful before. And now it is even more challenging. And we need to see what will be effective methods of communication in comparison of very, very strong communication of Ukraine, and everything is fading on this background. And when you think about positive communication, I think there are 2 points of it. Firstly, of course, to communicate trends very actively, and secondly, also turning our weaknesses to opportunities. That's where we are doing very badly, I think, because when we talk about interest of our Western partners towards human rights and democratization reforms, here we are not doing very well, unfortunately. And there are 2 ways. One is somehow omitting those issues in our communication, which is very bad. And second is addressing issues and somehow trying to turn them to opportunities. I cannot suggest at the moment how exactly it can be done, but I think that there are many ways to do it. So I think especially with the new reality, which we would not expect 2 months ago, that we would be thinking about candidacy status of EU, and there would be a real opportunity to get it. The communication should be also reviewed very seriously. And if we are lucky enough to have this candidacy status in 1 or 2 months period, then whole new chapter of foreign relations and external communication is opening for us. And of course, many of those recommendations we have in this document will be still relevant, but I think there will be serious need of consolidated discussion and approach of new communication. And one of the points actually is that what I see this document main focus is made on our Western partners, while there are also other countries which are important in this issue to fulfill our foreign goals and priorities. For example, Turkey in this reality with the NATO membership now and its role with the membership of Sweden and Finland is important. How do we communicate with Turkey to bring their support stronger and to make it stronger and somehow use Turkey's support of Georgia's NATO membership as a leverage at some point. And also communication with Eastern Asian countries is also interesting in this context. So I think when we talk about external communication, we should not limit ourselves with our Western partners, communicating with Western partners, and think more about, a bit out of frame and think about other bilateral communication that would be beneficial to our foreign priorities and reaching our goals. That's mainly what I wanted to say. And I think this is just a document which could be good for this moment, but it would be very good to review it in a few months period when we have more knowledge of what is happening in our region and what new realities are opening for us.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments?
May I just
Yeah, of
say
course. Sure.
something? Thank you very much for the presentation and for this opportunity. It is, we are, unfortunately, I got engaged in this process at this stage, at this quite late stage when the document is already almost finalized and a lot of work has been done, a very good work by Dimitri on this document. I think that, just to link it with what Irina was saying, this is not a foreign policy. This is not a communication strategy. These are just few ideas and recommendations for those that are to draft the new foreign policy strategy. So there will be opportunities, I guess, to also take on board some new recommendations, some other recommendations, some other perspectives. And as Dimitri mentioned in the beginning, longer you make the document sit, more outdated it becomes, especially now when the dynamic situation in the world really is, we have to catch up with changes that happen every minute, not every day even. So obviously, they have to finalize this work at some point, and I understand the complexity of the task. There are some very good points that are made, and I fully support those recommendations that are in the document, especially making the focus on the one, I would focus on the one which was made about the need to do a tailor-made have a tailor-made communication with countries, taking countries' context and the challenges and outlook into perspective. I think that is something that we have been missing a lot. We had a very much uniform messages that we were, using in communication with. I'm of course generalizing this. This might not have been happening at all occasions, but I think that is a serious challenge of our foreign policy and our communication outside the country, that we are very much standardizing this communication into same simplistic messages. And I think foreign policy is much deeper than that, and the communication should be much deeper than that and should be much more tailor-made. And I think the focus on that in the document is really good. We also, one serious problem that our communication strategy, in my view, has is that we are always saying that, Georgia's foreign policy priorities, that we all know what those are, our integration ambitions into the European Union, into NATO, this should be materialized, and we are lobbying for this. But we have, I think, still thought not enough on how to argue for this properly. I mean, what is it that Georgia is bringing to the table? What is it that we are able to bring to these alliances, organizations? We are, mainly using the argument of Georgia's society being very pro-European, which of course is an important factor and resonates with our partners. But I don't think that is sufficient in this very rational world, where every country has to make their decisions based on, of course, their own, domestic policies and priorities. We have to argue a little bit smarter and better what our advantages are and what we can bring to the table. It is very difficult. It is not easy. I'm not saying that, I have thought about it and I have, ready-made answers to this, but this is what needs, I think, discussion with participation with people and with really serious consideration. How can we, better argue our positions with the European Union and with NATO? I think economic interest, that this document is also putting emphasis on. Of course, now with the war in Ukraine, everything is very fluid and dynamic, but in general, in the normal times, it's a very important argument to make strong ties, because if the countries finally, and we have this, our foreign policy, for years, we have been making focus on economic relations. There was this initiative of having attaches of economic profile in the countries, in the partner countries, and they had a specific focus on attracting investments. I don't think this has been very successful, and maybe some revision is needed on why this is happening and what could be done better. But I think there is nothing more that can, or nothing better, in my view, that can lobby for countries' interests than the economic interests. I mean, if, let's say, France or Germany would have very firm, strong economic interests in Georgia, then it would be much easier for us to argue our political, ambitions with those countries. I'm just making this example because those are the countries that we have in this policy paper. So very good work, but at this stage, I think it is very difficult to make any recommendations, because that would require whole additional work on the whole document, which is not practical. And I would, if I were the author of the document, I wouldn't appreciate this kind of comments at this stage. So thank you for this, and I definitely would like to sum up by saying that, I mean, this situation has changed so much with the recent developments that I think everybody should be busy with just thinking about how we can adapt and use the changes that are happening, and how we can make our case stronger instead of making our case weaker, which sometimes I think we are more busy with doing that than with arguing our case. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tamna. Archil has comments, and please, floor is yours, and then I will just add up and sum up.
Archil Ghegheshidze, Leva increasing throughput capacity of transit corridor, where Georgia is one of the key elements, would also be a benefit for the paper, making it kind of a more comprehensive and less purely or solely Icelandic focused document. That's how I could respond to what I've heard from the presentation and from the comments here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just have some comment which was already mentioned here, but I just want to reiterate on that. Some of them are very kind of technical, others are broad. I know that we have been dealing with this, or Dimitri actually was dealing with this paper for quite a while, starting from autumn last year. So, but it becomes kind of periodical because of all these developments in and around our region. One is about very technical issue. It's about the updating of the part which is on the page 19, which is dealing it says basically that Georgia still it's kind of, I don't know, maybe it's a typo, that 2024 is still there, but as you know, it's not. So this comment is not valid anymore. As it was mentioned, I think that would be also very interesting if that's possible and if that's doable, to single out China and Georgia-Chinese relationship, because that could be very interesting to see, like we have the parts on France, on Germany, and others. I think that would be also interesting to see where Georgia sees China here, and also what should be the communication that we have with them. I could not agree more with with the previous speaker about this trio format and the communication with them, because unfortunately we all witness that this communication is broken. Basically, it needs to be amended somehow, especially in this reality when we all applied for EU membership. And considering the upcoming decision of the European Union on Georgia giving or not giving the candidate status, or giving something less than the candidate status, I think that would be also interesting to somehow have a linkage with the Western Balkans, because in that case, we would be thrown to the Western Balkans basket. And I think that would be interesting to to find out the communication channels with the Western Balkans, which again was not strong enough from my point of view. That was also very interesting to see in your presentation, this obstacle that is created for Georgia signing the free trade agreement with the US, because we have the free trade agreement with China. If you can also elaborate more in this text in that regard, that would be useful, I guess, because that's an interesting part of it. Yeah, and on Tamuna's point, of course, I mean, that's what's missing in this country for quite a while. What should be the Georgia's added value for EU membership? I think that's
NATO membership.
Yeah, that's a kind of must that we have to elaborate, which again has been missing for quite a while. And the last point about technicality, maybe one of the recommendations of this document could be, as you saw, something like 1 week ago, Eurobarometer published a very interesting survey about Ukraine, which is measuring the public attitudes towards Ukraine in EU member states. And maybe that would be interesting if we can also recommend our authorities to engage with the Eurobarometer. Maybe that would be possible to do this similar type of study for in case of Georgia, or in case of these trio countries together. So yeah, I would just end up here. I know that I also have to kind of sum up. So basically, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you once again for your very active participation, and Dimitri for your great work. And I know it's a tremendous job. As far as I know, this is kind of last working meeting that we have, and now we're gonna move to the official part. That means the presentation of the document by the end of July. So it would be interesting to also to get the feedback from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as well as the Prime Minister's office, because as Gokita correctly mentioned, I think that they are the main driving force in that regard. Yeah, definitely, for sure. And as I know, the government is considering to update the communication strategy, the current one, because of this new reality when it comes to the Georgia's membership bid for the European Union, because there are the parts which is, yes, yeah. So that would be also very timely to contribute with this paper in that process. Andrei, thank you very much again for joining us, and thank you everyone here in Tbilisi who Yes, sure. Yes, sure, Dimitri, please. Of course.
So, absolutely agree on most of the comments, and something I think it's possible to incorporate in the current paper, and something probably not. And why? I will explain it. First of all, it's impossible to develop the study of the entire world. I mean, and especially I started from that the Georgia's political agenda or the external communication agenda embrace all the entire world, and especially when it comes to the non-recognition, for example, economic cooperation and so on. But of course, for doing some study, we have to make some case selection. Case was selected based on the most important priorities of the Georgia, but at the same time, this main, I would say, main argument or main hypothesis of the paper could be generalized for all the countries. The approach should be tailored, not should be universal for everyone. What we have now and what I saw from the communication papers delivered from the ministry, so they have this general universal scheme of approaching all the partner countries with the same messages, same directions, with some deeper differentiation of the activities developed by the embassies. So, which is, in my understanding, the mistake, and could be generalized for all the countries around the world is the approach should be tailored for every country, and it's true for Western countries, or it is also true for the Mongolia, I mean, where we have the least interest. But if we're gonna start communication with them, at least we have to understand what Mongolia could benefit for Georgia and what Georgia could benefit to Mongolia. I mean, understanding what are the points of the cooperation, not only diplomacy, because I mean it's of course important, but current foreign policy making and current international relations are mostly based on the issue-based cooperation, rather than just only purely diplomacy and communication and traditional ways of making foreign international relations. So therefore, I don't think that it's possible to include the other countries like or even Turkey or the Baltic states as a separate variables of study, because actually it will never end. I mean, why not to include, for example, Southern Europe, which has quite big influence currently in European Union, and there is not so much attention from Georgian side. I mean, there are some cooperation with Spain, but least cooperation with Portugal and so on, but they are quite influential countries, actors in the European Union and so on. But again, if we go to the Portugal, we have to know why we are going to Portugal. If we go to, I don't know, whatever country. Huh? Malta, yeah, we have to know what we need from Malta, why we are going to Malta. Of course, there is a general message of European integration, but in addition, how we can motivate them in even more to achieve or to make them our alliance in achieving our external communications. Therefore, maybe I have to emphasize in the introduction part of the paper and then the conclusion part that this is something like case selection, and we have to generalize it to the other countries and put more highlights on the general arguments, general thesis of tailoring approach to individual countries. This and the same for China and same for the other countries. And economic cooperation. Here again, I was trying to not to intervene in the policy making, just to be more focused on how this policy is done. And what I remember when I was from the state office worker from the early 90s, that the proposal of or idea of the transit corridor was not just an idea, it was practical project presented to our partners. This is what I'm saying here. If we to speak about this important or we talk about the comparative advantage of Georgia as a transit corridor, we have to propose some practical projects. It could be the Antalya port, or it could be something different. But when we go to Kazakhstan or to go to the United States and asking for the investment in Georgia, of course, every country wants to invest money. Every country wants their investors to spend money in their own economy. But at the same time, if we are proposing something in order to increase their not GDP, but national product, gross national product, which could embrace the project in other countries. So we have to propose something, and we have to explain in money, in practical numbers, what would be benefits of the Germany or German companies and German state if they spend 1 billion on project or something. What will be the political impact? What will be the economic impact? This is what I'm proposing here, the practical, and to ensure that they have the projects are more secure. We have to ensure with financial contribution that political risks are ensured by participating in that. And we have resources. So we have at least, for example, huge amount of money in pension fund, which is not spent. I mean, which is just given to the banks in order to, they will think about what this investment, how they could invest this money. And we don't know actually how the banks are investing this amount of money who belongs to the Georgian state and which has to be, how say, has to be enlarged more than more than deficit of the country. So do we have money? We can invest, but we have to smartly invest it and to show to our partner that economic opportunities is not only opportunity, just liberal environment. It's something practical. And here I remember that Georgia was doing that, and all the big project which was done in Georgia in the 90s, in 2000, was elaborated in Georgia and presented, and actually not let me say lies, and he was part of this project. And the state was presenting the practical project and asking not just general money, but the practical amount of money, and with practical calculation how we could benefit foreign policy, foreign strategic interests, and also the economically these participant countries. So these are these general remarks on the comments, and absolutely I agree. And I think that this project not gives more. It gives some answers on the questions, but also creates additional questions, which are, in my understanding, this subject of the further research. How we can do, what could be the interest of the European countries bringing us to their family? So what will, and there is no clear answer. There are some speculation about it. Someone think that it's something like enlarging the market, for example, or someone will think that the democracy is alive and still has a potential. This should be also the issue, but there is no clear answer. So I think we have to analyze them. Academics, the politicians, they have to analyze what is the possible benefits of the other countries by bringing us in their family. So I think that's again the tailoring the approach and also the researches on countries, issues based, and so again China and the US. I couldn't say that the not having the agreement with China will automatically means that we'll sign free trade. Of course not, but they don't like it. I mean, it is not about the Georgia's agreement, but it's about general assessment of the free trade regimes created by China, by United States. They don't like. They think that they undermine the general principle of fair and free trade, and they are against the general system of this free trade organization. So they undermine the importance of the protection of the environment, labor rights, and then so on and so on. And it is considered as a soft power instrument to influence to increase their area of influence. So this is what is stated by the state officials from United States new administration. So the previous one had some kind of agreement with China about it. It was not, it was declaration, whatever, but it was done during the Trump's time. But now it's a different approach. So how we play? I don't have the answer what can be done. I was not so big a fan of signing this agreement and being in the parliament. I was a bit criticizing that during the ratification time. But actually, I don't have the answer of how can be. It couldn't be denunciated. Of course, it's a big country, then it has an influence, and they are spending a lot of money, and they have the role in the Georgian development. But somehow it should be smartly developed the strategy how we are talking with the United States when they have such a assessment of the Chinese free trade agreements, and we have it. And so what are our answers? And I think it's also additional area of the study and research, so it should be done. And I think the ministry and desk officers, they have resources. At least they have more resources, and the resources, what they have could be used in a more smart way. Finances, what they are spending on the campaigns should be done in a more efficient way. And this is also additional area of work for the experts of the communication who develop to assess the resources and objectives, and they develop the strategy and action plan matching these resources and objectives. My idea was just to create what are the gaps, and I think that the gaps are quite visible now.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I don't want to take much of your time because we are slightly back on our schedule. Thank you again. Thanks for this very interesting exchange of ideas and discussion. And as I said, the next step, and as I was told by the organizers, it would be the actual presentation of this paper together with the other papers which is produced in this framework of this project. Thank you, Andrei, for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Glad to meet you again.
participation. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Body language.
Ani იქნება, მაგრამ ეგ სამსაათი.